Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Everybody, peace. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. As you guys know, I'm your host, Casuan Caudle, and it is so great, so wonderful. I am so blessed to be with you guys again, talking about this wonderful game of basketball. Guys, the NBA regular season is fastly dwindling down. And I can feel the anticipation. I can feel the excitement, the energy wrapping up. I can feel it enhancing, increasing. People are getting ready for the playoffs, getting ready for the start of the play-in tournaments. A lot of storylines are beginning to wrap up. A few storylines are actually beginning to open up as well. This season has been filled with injuries, filled with storylines, filled with accolades, and it's been a wonderful season. But we still have a few more games left, and it's not finished yet. Guys, man, I'm just happy to be here today with you guys, man. We have quite a few things to talk about since the last time you heard from me. Has anybody heard from Kawhi Leonard lately? How's he been? We should probably check up on him. We're going to do that in the show today, later. Kyrie Irving took an elbow to the face the other night, so he's getting x-rays at this moment. Anthony Davis gets injured again, third time. We will analyze that and see if he is injury prone and what impact that's going to have on the Lakers this season. And I'm going to talk about why so few players actually make it overseas and have lengthy careers, and why I feel playing overseas can be more difficult in some aspects than playing on the home front. So we're going to be talking about all that and a few more things as well. Also, James Harden might be returning tonight to action. LeBron James might be returning as well. We got a lot to talk about today, guys. But to get started, I want to talk about something that I completely forgot to talk about on the show, on my previous show, and that's Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony, about a week and a half ago, moved into the top 10 on the all-time scoring list. And let me just give my apologies, because last show I gave credit to Russell Westbrook instantaneously for tying Oscar Robertson's all-time triple-double mark, which he has since recently broken, by the way. So congratulations to him. But I forgot to give Carmelo Anthony credit, and so just let me apologize for not doing that sooner. But I wanted to give Carmelo his own segment to which I can talk about his game and his career up to this date and where I see him on the all-time great list. So we can get into that. So as you guys know, Melo moved into the all-time top 10 all-time scoring list a couple weeks ago, or about a week and a half ago, sorry. For his career, he has over 20,000 points, it looks like. But Yes, as I say, moved in the top 10. And at this moment today, as we speak, he's 72 points away from moving into the ninth spot. I think there's about 4 or 5 games left. I don't know if he'll do that, but I think he will do it during the playoffs. So let me just start by saying that Carmelo Anthony is one of the most interesting players I've seen. For those who don't know, Carmelo obviously started out in Denver, and when he got into the league, so he was the main primary option in Denver, and George Karl ran the offense through Melo, but they ran a lot of half-court sets, and Melo would take a lot of contested mid-range jumpers because he's the primary option, and George Karl would allow him to do that. And so Carmelo Anthony got comfortable shooting a lot of contested mid-range jumpers. He wasn't highly efficient, but he took a lot of shots. He shot the ball. And he was very explosive when he first got into the league. And his game was very similar and akin to that of play in the mid to late 90s. And, he got to New York in 2010, 2011, and he was still a threat offense. Like, he was still in his prime. And his style of play, was effective for him. But you could tell as he got older, and more importantly, as the game evolved, his game never evolved or didn't evolve initially. And he looked slower and he looked worse than what he really was because he was still taking contested mid-range jumpers. And Melo's a 2-foot jumper, so we know when he drives into the paint, he likes to go off 2 feet, which allows him to have more control and sometimes more explosiveness. But because he was getting older and he still had a lot of weight on him, he wasn't as explosive and he wasn't getting as much height. So when he's going off 2 feet and then he gets his pump, a lot of the bigs aren't jumping because they don't need to jump to block Melo's shot at this point. And so he's going off 2 feet in the paint, he's pumping, but no one's jumping in the air. Then he goes to his jumper and it's getting blocked. This is more, I'm talking about his time in OKC. And he never was a catch and shoot shooter because the ball was, primarily in his hand through the initiation of the offense in New York and also in Denver. And so that's why, when during his time in Houston and OKC, he looked worse, quote unquote, worse than what he really was because he never evolved his game up to that point. And so at that moment, I was saying, oh, well, Melo's done, man. And Melo's had a great career, maybe a slightly overrated career, but he's done. He needs to retire. Because what is he going to contribute to a championship? He's not a catch-and-shoot shooter. He doesn't defend. He's never been a great defender. The ball needs to be in his hand, and he can't shoot three. So what is he going to do? But it's okay to be wrong, and it's okay for things to change and your stance to change. Because Melo, since being in Portland, has completely revitalized his game, revamped his career, and has changed his style of play to make it more conducive to winning. He's slimmed down. He's gotten in a lot better shape. And the ball no longer sticks in his hand. So when Melo gets it, it's either catch and shoot, catch and drive, or catch and pass. Previously when Melo was in, OKC and New York and Denver, Melo would get it, and he would jab, pump, jab. Wasted like 5 seconds right there making a move, and he hasn't gone anywhere. But Melo's become much more efficient and much more conducive to the way the game is being played today. So now he's catching, shooting, catching, drive, catching, passing. Those are the three options. And so he's become much more efficient that way. And also he's become a much better catch and shoot shooter from the 3-point line. So now instead of shooting contested long range, mid range jumpers, he's shooting 3-pointers. More efficient, obviously. And also he has become a better defender. Quiet as kept. He's become a much better defender. since being in Portland. I think it's because he's losing weight and he's gotten in much better shape. So he's more agile laterally, so he can stay in front of defenders now, even at his age. But he was never a great defender, but he's no longer a liability like he was in OKC or in Houston. But Melo has completely revamped and revitalized his game, and we have to give him credit for that. And I have to give him credit for that because he proved me wrong. I thought after watching him playing OKC and Houston, I thought he's done. Okay, Melo, you're done. It's time to go. Time to retire. But I mean, just looking at his accolades, he's a 10-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA team. He was a scoring champ back in 2013. He was an All-Rookie team. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Is he a top 25 player of all time? I don't think so. Top 50 player of all time? I think that's more likely. That's a better assessment. I do think Melo's slightly overrated, but Melo is a great player. He's just off his numbers, you would have to say he's one of the better scorers of this generation, though he wasn't always efficient, in my opinion. But the numbers don't lie. But he never would have been able to be the best player on a championship team. I mean, it shows. I mean, look, he could never lead his team. I mean, look what happened. He had the perfect opportunity in New York. And people say, oh, that New York team wasn't very talented. Well, I mean, they won 56 games with Jason Kidd and J.R. Smith and Shumpert and Tyson Chandler and Melo, obviously. So Melo was a great player. But I don't want to get into that right now. I wanted to stick on giving him credit and giving him the props he deserved because he has completely revamped and revitalized career. And for that, I have to give him credit. I mean, so just on the season right now, he's averaging 13 points, 3 rebounds, an assist, shooting 40% from 3, shooting 88% from the free throw line. Has a PER of 14.7. He's filling his role perfectly in Portland. And we have to give him credit for that. So once again, hats off to you, Melo. Congratulations for moving into the top 10 all-time scoring list. You'll probably end your career either at number 9 or number 8, depending on how deep Portland goes into the playoff this year and how deep they go into the playoffs next year. But it's good to see guys evolve. It's good to see people evolve. It's good to see that people don't remain stagnant. And that's a life lesson as well. We have to constantly evolve and change who we are as individuals to become the best version of ourselves. But speaking of becoming the best version of ourselves, it just doesn't seem like Brooklyn can become the best version of themselves due to injuries. There's another injury in Brooklyn. Unfortunately, this is now on Kyrie Irving. He recently took an elbow to the face. And how long will he be out? What did the x-rays say? We're going to analyze all that. Anthony Davis has also gotten hurt for the 3rd time. Man, this short NBA season has taken its toll on players. We're going to be talking about that as well. Kawhi Leonard. Is there an APB out for him? Has anyone heard from him? We got to check up on that dude, man. Make sure he's okay. We're going to be talking about that as well. And I'm going to be talking about why most guys, most athletes, most players cannot survive overseas basketball. What things are they missing? What things don't they have? What are they not expecting? And why is it more difficult to play overseas than to play on the home front here in the U.S.? Guys, we're going to be talking about all that and so much more during the rest of the show. So stick around. It's not stuff you're going to want to miss.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the second segment of this show. Thank you so much for sticking with us and for just listening to us up to this point. It's such a blessing, and I'm so grateful just to be on this podcast, on this show, talking to you guys about this wonderful game of basketball. Yeah. Quick pause from the show. I just want to tell a quick story about when I first learned about the little nail at the free throw line. And if you guys don't know, I'll explain to you guys. So it was like my sophomore year of high school, and it was late one night. I was in the gym, and I'm just shooting some free throws before I head out. And the gym attendant that was working that day, he had seen me. I had missed like 4 or 5 free throws in a row. He walked up to me. He was like, and he said, "Sean, let me show you something real quick, man." And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh man, what is this guy about to show me? What is he about to show me on the court?" And so he comes up to the free throw line. He says, "Let me see the ball." Let's show my hand on the ball. And he says, "Sean, the reason you're missing all your free throws is because you're not lined up center." And I'm thinking to myself, of course I'm lined up center. I follow through. It's right in front of the rim. I'm squared. I'm shoulder. What do you mean I'm not center? What are you talking about? And he said, "You've got to find the nail on the free throw line." And I said, "Oh, okay, what do you mean? What nail on the free throw line?" And he said, look closely at the free throw line. At the center of the free throw line, there is a little dot. Looks like a dot, but it's actually a nail that's implemented into the free throw line. And it's what divides the rim right down the middle. So he said, since you're right-handed, your follow-through has to be completely centered, right? So if you're right-handed, you want your right foot to be on that nail. That way, when you extend the way all the way through on your follow-through, it's right down the middle. And I was thinking to myself, what? I was like, well, as first I said, well, the nail is there. I see the dot. I was like, what are you talking about? Let me shoot. Let me see what he's talking about. So I put my right foot on the nail. I extend all the way through. I follow through, and it was nothing but net. I said, let me try it again. Shot another one. Nothing but net. I ended up making like 10, 12 free throws in a row. Because of that nail in the center. And it's the little details like that's what allows us to be successful. It's what separates the good from the great. And once we find what centers us, then we can truly become the best version of ourselves. So find your nail in the free throw line. But that's my story. just had to give a little quick story right there. I didn't give one of my personal stories in a long time, so I thought this was the perfect time to do that. But back to the show, guys. So we got a lot to talk about today, or in this segment. Apologies. But before we get into it, if you weren't with us on the first segment, we talked about Carmelo Anthony and gave him his dues for moving into the top 10 on the all-time scoring list. If you missed it, you heard me talk about how I feel Carmelo Anthony has evolved as a player, where I see him today, and where I see him among the all-time greats. But if you stick around later for the show, you're going to hear me talk about Kawhi Leonard. Where is he at? Where has he been? And I'm going to talk about why most players don't have successful careers overseas. But for this segment, let's talk about, unfortunately, some injuries. So last night, as of today, Kyrie Irving hurt his took an elbow to the face last night, and so did Anthony Davis got injured as well. But let's start out with Anthony Davis. So during the Lakers 101-99 victory over the New York Knicks at home, Anthony Davis said he was hurt. But I just want to recap the game real quick. So obviously the big moment of that game was Taylor Horton-Tucker hitting that game-winning three-pointer with about 20 seconds left. And then he was playing point guard because obviously Dennis Schroeder is out still with health and safety protocol, and Alex Caruso left the game early in the third with a sore right foot. So that left Taylor Horton-Tucker as the only point guard. Taylor Horton-Tucker finished with a double-double and 13 points and 10 assists. But I said prior during the preseason that Taylor Horton-Tucker is going to be a key asset for the Lakers. And you saw how important the Lakers thought of him when they rejected the trade for Kyle Lowry because they would have had to give him Horton-Tucker. Which obviously in hindsight you can say that's a good decision, but even during the trade talks, I said no, they shouldn't give up Taylor Horton-Tucker because that's a key piece of your future. But Taylor Horton-Tucker, he's a combo guard, but the way that the NBA is played today, it will be easy for him to transition to playing the point. He just has to get used to making decisions with the ball in his hand as opposed to just getting off the catch, which I think is something he can do. Though he did finish with 7 turnovers last night. That was his first time playing primarily the point guard position. So I think it's something he'll just have to get adjusted to, but I think he will be comfortable with it. I mean, he had 10 points, 13 points and 10 assists in 34 minutes coming off the bench. So that's nothing to laud at. But getting back to the topic, Anthony Davis stated that he felt he was iffy. He will be iffy for their next game against the Rockets. But he said that he has a sore right groin. He's quote unquote, Davis said, "I'm hurting. Not more so my body, just my groin. It got tight. I'm not sure about the next game. I mean, I'm going to get treatment and see how I feel. I want to say I'm going to play, but it's really bothering me tonight. We'll see how I feel tomorrow and then later on in the day." And if you guys remember what I said yesterday, where I talked about if Anthony Davis and LeBron James are not healthy, they should not be playing. They need to be healthy. They need to be as close to 100% as possible by the time the playoffs roll around or the play-in tournament rolls around. So Anthony Davis, last night he finished with 20 points. He had a plus-minus of 7, but he did shoot 8 of 23 from the field, grabbed 6 rebounds and 4 assists. But if LeBron James and Anthony Davis are not healthy, they do not need to be playing. because it doesn't matter where they fall in the play-in tournament or in the playoffs. If they're not 100% or close to it, they're not going to go very far either way. But I see why people would want Anthony Davis and LeBron James to play due to the fact that the last 3 games, for the Lakers are against the Rockets and I'll just look it up real quick. Against the Rockets, the Pacers, and New Orleans. While Portland closes out their season against Utah, Phoenix, and one more game. Who does Portland close out against? Utah, Phoenix, and Denver. So that's a tough schedule for Portland in their last 3 games. And while the Mavericks, they close out against the Pelicans, Toronto, and Minnesota. So it's understandable why the Lakers would want to capitalize on their schedule, because they can see Portland possibly losing 2 or 3 games and dropping into the play-in tournament. But like I said, it doesn't matter if they're a 6th seed or a 7th seed or 8th seed. If the Lakers aren't 100% healthy, they are not going very far in the playoffs. But that's just my stance on it. It's unfortunate to see that Anthony Davis is still showing signs of injury, but I think the groin has more to do with his ankle or his Achilles, whatever is bothering him initially, due to the added pressure. So due to the added pressure that is he's putting on the other side of his body, and he probably has some tight hips as well, just because he's still probably getting into his basketball shape. When you have tight hips, things like that start to hurt as well, like your back and your groin, because you're overcompensating. But I like I said, if they're not healthy, if Anthony Davis isn't healthy, he doesn't need to play. Just sit him until the play-in tournament starts. But another injury that occurred in the NBA, Kyrie Irving, once again, took an elbow to the face during the game against the Chicago Bulls when he was going for a rebound. He tried to go for a rebound against Nikola Vucevic, and he ended up taking an elbow to the face. He did clear concussion protocol, but during the X-rays, the results came back as inconclusive, which can be worrisome because you guys know that Irving has a history of facial lacerations and getting injuries on his face, whether it's broken orbitals or cheekbones. And he has had to wear a mask before, but this can be worrisome because of this has been a constant for the Nets, quite frankly. And for them to get another injury to their star when their star is in Kyrie Irving is unfortunate. But the severity of it has yet to be seen. But if they're saying it's inconclusive, this tells me that Kyrie could be missing some time. But the good news also for the Nets is that James Harden will be returning soon, possibly tonight. But that remains to be seen. So these are some injuries that have been going on in the NBA. But it's unfortunate to see the injuries, and I think a lot of it has to do with the shortened off season, like I always say, or as I've continued to say. That's the reason, in my opinion, for the amount of injuries that have occurred in the NBA up until this point. But, guys, has anybody heard from Kawhi Leonard lately? Where is he at? What is the problem? What's going on? I'm going to be talking about Kawhi Leonard and the season he's had up to this point, and why no one's talking about him. I'm also going to be talking about why most players don't make it overseas, why they don't last very long. So, guys, I'm going to be talking about all of this and so much more during the remainder of the show. So stick around. It's definitely not stuff you're going to miss.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Thank you for sticking with us after the break. We are now on to our third topic of the day. Guys, so far we've covered Carmelo Anthony and him being a top 10 scorer of all time. I talked about where I see his career as it is today, whether or not he's been overinflated or overrated, what impact he's had on the game, how his style of play has evolved, and how he's managed to obviously overcome adversity and face challenges, and where the odds were stacked against him. But Melo, showing the professional that he was, able to transform his game to where it can be better adapt to the playing style of today. Which is something that great players are able to do. We also talked about Kyrie Irving and his most recent injury, whether or not he'll be missing time for that. And Anthony Davis, also got re-injured as well. All these injuries throughout the NBA is due to the shortened schedule and the shortened off season. But what are these most recent injuries? How are these going to impact these contenders? We talked about all that in the first two segments. And now I want to get into our third topic of the day. Kawhi Leonard. Has anybody heard from him? Is he okay? I just have not heard much from him, man. I'm joking, but in all seriousness, I do want to talk about Kawhi Leonard in the season that he's been having. Up to date. Granted, this season Kawhi has missed quite a few games. I believe he's missed 18 games. If I'm wrong on that, someone can correct me. But I want to just read his stats real quick. So on the season, Kawhi Leonard's averaging 25 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 51% from the field, 40% from the three-point line, 88% from the free throw line, has a PER of 26, and win share total of 8.8. So these are really solid numbers for Kawhi. And it's just interesting that, because in my opinion, Kawhi Leonard is the third best player in the NBA, behind Kevin Durant and LeBron James. But, because of Kawhi's playing style, he's never going to get the necessary credit or adoration that he truly deserves. But Kawhi has been highly efficient this season when he plays. But what I have noticed is that this season he has added another dimension to his game. And that is his ability to create for himself more efficiently going into his pull-up, right? So starting back to last season, Kawhi Leonard started adding to his ability to handle the ball more proficiently, and get to a spot more efficiently. He's always been efficient, but really get into a shot, not just into his floater or get into the rim, but actually into his pull-up. And I was watching him play, and he showed the ability to, get into his drag, change his pace, and then blow by his defender. But what he did well was he didn't get straight downhill, but he dragged, or like he created space with a little side dribble to avoid the defense into his pull-up. And so what that shows me is that Kawhi has become much more crafty and, like I said, efficient in his movements. And so Kawhi is just adding more dimensions to his game. And it's turning him into a better all-around, overall better player. But Kawhi has always been, superbly efficient, but now he's adding this extra dimension to his game that wasn't there before. But now with the addition of Rondo on that Clippers team, Kawhi Leonard has looked even better than ever when he has been on the court. He doesn't have to work as hard anymore to get into a spot or, get to a spot by creating for himself. He can now come off a few more pin downs and stagger screens, and now he can catch it on the elbow as opposed to, ball handling and driving to the elbow. He can just catch there at the mid post, jab, face the basket, and that's a lot less work for him. So now he can create from there, and now he's more efficient because he's catching the ball now closer to the basket. But what Kawhi has also shown proficiency to do is he's increased his range. And like I said, he's shooting 40% from the three-point line right now. And his ability to shoot three has always been one of his weaker traits. But not only has he shown the ability to shoot consistently from the three-point line, but also to, like I said, to pull up. So his pull-up, his ability to pull up, whether it be in the mid-range or in the three-point line, has increased tremendously over this past season. And obviously he's still in his prime, but also, with Paul George on that roster as well, it's hard to really double Kawhi unless he's catching it in the mid-post. So because he can't double Kawhi, he's getting much more easier scoring opportunities than what he typically would. But it's interesting to see that he's putting up these numbers. However, he's not in any of the MVP discussion. Now, obviously, it's because he's missed so many games, but there's other guys that miss games that are in the MVP discussion. Like guys like Joel Embiid, James Harden when he was before he got hurt, LeBron James before he got hurt. CP3 has missed some games too, but Kawhi Leonard, I feel, should be in somewhat of the consideration for the MVP candidate. And I said this a couple weeks ago, but Paul George could be a sneaky candidate as well. I mean, at this point now it's a little too late, but the Clippers have two possible MVP candidates on their roster, in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. But you can make the argument, you can make the assessment that if Kawhi Leonard, played in at least 60 of the games, he'd be top 2 MVP candidate with these numbers. Yeah. And the question becomes, so can Kawhi keep this level of proficiency up in the playoffs? And his track record would tell you that he can, because he's done it before. Game 6 last year against Denver was really the only game, Game 7, really the only game and the only closeout game where I saw Kawhi Leonard fold under pressure or where he just didn't play well. I don't think that's going to happen again. I do think that, I already said this before, but the Clippers didn't have a point guard in that series, so they didn't have someone to control tempo, pacing, and get easier scoring opportunities for Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. But with the addition of Rajon Rondo, I think that's going to help. That's going to be different, and that problem won't be there this time around. But people think about, I have been asking whether or not, if the Clippers don't win this year, do they blow up the roster? You invested entirely too much into this team right here, into this roster, to just blow it up. I mean, you gave up your future for the next 5 or 6 years to get Kawhi and Paul George. So you stick with this. You made the investment. You ride the investment out all the way. But it will be nice to see how well the Clippers can fare in the playoffs this season. But Kawhi has been a tremendous talent this year. But something else he's done better at, or improved upon, is his reading ability on coming off ball screens. A lot of times you don't have to worry about Kawhi Leonard playmaking coming up ball screens as opposed to just scoring. But now when you see Kawhi Leonard coming off those ball screens, he's shown the ability to keep the defender on his hip and drag in multiple defenders, draw in multiple defenders, so he can get those dump downs or lobs or even a skip pass. His passing's become a lot better as well. So now he's multidimensional, multifaceted, coming off those ball screens, and that just makes him much more of a threat to the defense. So Kawhi has shown tremendous improvements in his game, in the nuance, in the details. But that goes to show you that when you work on the details, not just in basketball, with anything in life, that's when you see the true return on investments, the true dividends. Because it's the details is what makes the success, determines the success rate. So we have to focus on the little details, the small, minute things, to get vast improvements. And like I said, things like Kawhi's added, like the ability to avoid the defender on the drives with that side dribble, or getting more height on his drags or his change of shoulder height. He's not low all the time. His offhand is quicker going into his pull-up, which makes it look more efficient. He's no longer landing off balance when he goes into his shot from the three-point line. He's always on balance now. Little details like that is what makes players more efficient. And it's those little things what separates the good players from the great players. And Kawhi has turned into a great player because of those details, which is why he's in my top 3 players in the league right now. Possibly top 2. But I mean, my opinion is, I think I would. I know I said that LeBron James is my top two, but I think it's Kevin Durant and then Kawhi Leonard and then LeBron James for the top three players in the NBA right now. But that it could be determined to change. But as of today, those are my top three. Like I said, it'd be interesting. It'd be nice to see how the Clippers perform and how they fare going to the playoffs this year. With the playoffs around the corner. But guys, though no one has heard from Kawhi, I know that Kawhi is doing great this year. He's missed a few games, but he's still proficient and efficient as always and continuing to add with minute details to his game. And I love to see it. But guys, you guys ever wonder why so many players come back home from overseas and never get another contract? Or why some players don't even finish their first season of overseas basketball all the way through? Well, listen, if you stick around for this next segment, I'm going to explain to you guys why most players, most college athletes, can't handle the overseas life and why in some aspects playing on the home front here in America is sometimes easier than playing overseas. So stick around. I'm going to be talking about all that and a lot more. It's definitely not something you're going to miss. So stick around.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the last segment of our show. Oh, man. Guys, we have talked about a lot on the show today. We talked about Carmelo Anthony and gave him his props and congratulated him on joining the top 10 for all-time scoring list in the NBA. He has had an amazing career up to date, and he's had quite the resurgence of his career since signing with the Portland Trail Blazers. He's become an integral part to their team and their success. And I said it previously. I thought Melo's career was done once he left OKC. Quite frankly, I thought it was done when he left New York. I thought he was just a shell of himself in OKC. But the fact that he was able to get back in shape and remold his playing style to fit the playing style of the game today shows that he's a epitome of a great player and a true student of the game. Great players throughout history have shown the ability to adapt to any adverse situation, and Melo has done that. And I can give him nothing but credit for that. So congratulations, Melo. You've earned this. You've earned this award, and you've earned your spot in the top 10 all-time scoring list. We also talked about Kyrie Irving and the injury he took to the face against Chicago. How long is he going to be out? What effect will that have on the Brooklyn Nets as they close out this season? Will they be able to get the 1 seed? That is determined to be seen. let's talk Anthony Davis and him getting re-injured as well. What effect is that going to have on the Lakers and their chances of missing, their chances of playing for the 6th seed, or will they end up having to play in the play-in tournament? Like I said previously, if I'm the Lakers GM, Lakers front office, I'm sitting LeBron and AD until they're 100% healthy, because I know that if those guys are healthy, there's no one that's going to beat them in the play-in tournament. And quite frankly, even if they get matched up with Phoenix or Utah, I don't see either of those teams beating a Lakers team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis at least 90% health. And if I'm LA, the Lakers, I don't want to get matched up with the Clippers in the first round, who are the 3 seed at this moment. Because in my opinion, the Clippers are the best team in the Western Conference. And they're going to be the ones representing the West in the NBA Finals. So if I'm the Lakers, I'm doing everything I can to avoid a first-round matchup with the Clippers as well. But speaking of the Clippers, we also talked about Kawhi Leonard and how he's quiet as kept, putting up MVP numbers this year, playing at a proficient rate. But because he's only played in 52 games, no one's talking about it. And he's not in the MVP discussion. But if he's played more games, I do see him as a potential MVP candidate. But I also talked about the nuances he's added to his game and how it's the details, the small, minute details at this point in his career is what's separating him from amongst the greats. And how he is, in my opinion, the second best player in the NBA behind Kevin Durant. And it's going to be nice to see those two matched up in the NBA Finals this year. But guys, in this last segment, I just want to talk about something that's been on my mind the past couple of weeks. And it's this concept of people thinking that it's so easy to play basketball overseas as a professional athlete. And I just want to talk about why some players, don't make it overseas and don't last overseas. So just super quick, the reason that a lot of players don't make it overseas is because, one, they don't know how to network themselves. 2, they don't know their skill set. They don't know how to do research. And 3, they're just lazy. So networking. So I know guys that are playing overseas right now that have no business playing overseas at all. But they got there, and so credit to them. That's because they know they were able to network themselves to the right agents, to the right GMs, to get their name out there and find a potential roster spot. Because the information is there online. You can go on Eurobasket and type in and look in whatever league you want to look up in any country, and you'll find the general manager's email address, the owner's email address, the coach's email address, their Instagram, whatever. You can find all of that, and you can email as a player, you can email them directly. So you don't need an agent. From my experience, you don't need an agent to get a contract, but having an agent does make the job easier. Yeah. But you can definitely market yourself and brand yourself on your own. But players in general, they don't know how to do that. One, they don't know how to, and 2, they're too lazy to do it. But quite frankly, it's normally the latter. They're just too lazy, because at this point now, everyone knows the information for how to contact GMs, coaches. It's all in Eurobasket. You can look up that information. But most cats are just too lazy to do it. But then it goes into some of them don't know how to do it as well. But there's so many people online that are offering assistance. Like for instance, Dre Baldwin. He's a former overseas basketball player that wrote a book actually on how to help players get overseas and how to manage themselves overseas and how to get themselves more exposure and how to create networking opportunities for themselves. Dre Baldwin has a book out as well. or has his book out. And also Mike Krepke, another former overseas basketball player, wrote a book too on how to handle overseas life and how to network yourself, how to brand yourself, and things to look out for. But why players can't handle overseas once they get there? So most of us as college athletes, we come from a program in college where we got 24-hour gym access, we got one-on-one time with trainers, like athletic trainers. We could go into the recovery room and get ice, stem treatment, ice baths, heating pads, whatever you want, you name it, we could get it. Weight room access at all times, pool access depending on how up to date your facilities were. Fan treatment during the games, after the games. We're used to that sort of aura, that sort of environment where we expect everything to be great and top tier in terms of our equipment and facilities. But when you get overseas, you that can no longer be the expectation. Every place I played at so far in my career has not even compared to the facilities I had in college. And I'm about to go into my third year as a pro. And none of the facilities can compare to the ones I had in college. But that's because there's not as much money being put into those professional facilities as there are in the college facilities. So a lot of guys, they expect what they had in college. They expect to have that treatment as well in the professional level, but that's simply not the case. So we have to humble ourselves and know what we're getting ourselves into when we go into overseas. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the scheduling, the playing style. You're practicing every single day. You're getting shoot-arounds in. You're getting extra work in after practice. A lot of cats understand, like when you say you're a professional athlete, that's your job. That's your 9 to 5. You're doing that all day. That's what you're there. You're not there in that other country to go sightseeing, to go, to go out and about. No, you're there to play basketball. And if you're blessed with the opportunity to go out and sightsee and explore, then do that. Yeah, for sure. But your first priority is to play basketball and to train and to get better and to help that team win. So the priorities are not always in check when those players go over there, which is why they don't last as well. And a lot of guys aren't used to being away from home for an extended period of time. Like, you have to be okay with being away from home for anywhere from 4 to 9 months, depending on how long the season is. Are you okay with that? Most people aren't, because that's the first time they've been away from home. Because it's a difference between being away from home for 4 to 9 months while still in the same country, as opposed to being away from home for 4 to 9 months halfway across the world. It doesn't sound like it's that big of a difference, but when you do it, it is. It is a much bigger difference. And your parent and your family can't always come, fly to see, especially with the pandemic going on. They can't fly to watch you play all times. So you have to be okay with that. Are you okay with adjusting to the meals in whatever country you're playing in and not eating the food you're used to? Are you okay with being on a meal plan, like on a diet? The language barrier. Are you going to be able to learn the language? There's so many little things that don't even revolve around basketball that you have to adjust to, that a lot of guys aren't able to adjust to. And what happens is a lot of guys get homesick and they want to leave. And so they end up leaving and not even finishing the season. Or they finish the season, but they don't want to go back because they were miserable. But being an overseas professional basketball player really tells you how much you love the game. It really tests your love for it. Because if you love it, you're going to be able to fight through all that, and you're not even going to care about that because you're getting to do what you love for a living. But it's really gonna weed out the people who don't love it, who are just doing it for the acclaim that comes with it, the acclaim that comes with saying that I'm a professional basketball player. Because there's a lot of cats that do it just for that namesake, but don't actually love the game. But let them get overseas for a year and they'll stop. Yep. the overseas lifestyle has a very, very interesting way of humbling you. And a lot of these cats need humbling. So it's necessary. It's necessary. So there's so much that goes into this overseas lifestyle that a lot of people don't know about. Which is why, overseas professional basketball players need to be commended for what they do and what they go through. Because you can make the argument that playing on the home front, whether it be in the TBL, the PBA, or even the G League, is at some points easier than playing overseas because you don't have to worry about being away from home. I won't even get to the paying grades because that's not the conversation. But, you don't have to worry about the food, the facilities not being up to date or up to par with what you're used to. All those things you don't have to worry about if you're playing here on the home front here in the U.S. But when you're overseas, those are things you have to worry about. So you could make the argument that playing overseas is much more difficult than playing here in stateside. But just the opportunity to play in another country and experience a different culture, you can't pass that up, and you can't get that anywhere else. So when people ask me why do I ever have plans of playing in the G League, I tell them no, because listen, I get to travel the world. Because I'm able to travel the world because I can dribble an orange ball and put it in a basket. And I play a child's game for a living, and that's a blessing. And I get to do that and travel the world at the same time. No, I would never pass that up. So, you have to have things in the right perspective and realize how blessed you are. But, that's why a lot of guys can't last overseas, man, because it's grueling. It's grueling and it's taxing on the body. And are you okay with playing through an ankle sprain? Because if you tell the coach or the athletic trainer that you're hurt, that's going to get back to the GM, and the GM might send you back home because they don't want to keep you there if you're not 100%. So are you okay with playing through injuries? Are you okay with not having the best athletic trainers? And these are all things that you're going to have to deal with. Hopefully not, but that you might have to deal with as a pro athlete overseas. And how are you going to react to that? But these are things people don't think about. These are things that the average fan doesn't know about. And, and are you okay with playing in smaller crowds, in front of smaller crowds, in front of smaller stadiums, in smaller venues? A lot of cats in college, they love that atmosphere, the college atmosphere, with the fans roaring and the bright lights and the glitz and glamour. And don't get me wrong, I loved it too. Everyone loves it. But if that's the only reason you're playing basketball, you're not going to last overseas because that stuff is not there for the most part. And most leagues not. So it really shows you who's doing it for the love of the game and who's just doing it for clout, for lack of better words. Has a quick way of humbling you. But to humble ourselves is necessary for growth. And that's my spiel on why most players, or some players, don't last overseas. Those that do, love it. I myself included. I love this game. And like I always say, I'm just so blessed to be on this platform to talk about basketball, play basketball for a living. Like, I'm so blessed, and I wouldn't want to do anything else, honestly. And thank you guys for listening to me and giving me feedback, man. I'm so appreciative of it. Just thank you to everyone, my other hosts on the shows, my producers. I'm just blessed to be here and do this for a living. So I will, like I said, I wouldn't want to do anything else. But guys, that's all we have on the show for today. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you want to support us, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe to us. We are on all streaming platforms. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find other social medias on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Guys, thank you so much for listening to this GSMC basketball podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Guys, I will be back again later in the week. Can't wait to speak with you guys soon and continue to stay safe, guys. And until next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.